Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
I'm always watching new stuff. Sometimes I get criticized for it, but I like seeing what people are doing. I'm more visual. I'm ADD. Let me tell you what. Most people have some kind of learning disability, and I have them too. And I didn't know it till way after I finished college and all of those things, but realized what some of my things were, and so I learned better. Straight audio. Found out that I wished in college I had never taken notes, but had recorded it. I had a friend who he would record everything, a very intelligent guy. He probably didn't have to, and then would take notes, and then he'd go home and take notes again off of his recording. And it wasn't easy to record at that time because those were big clunky things that you'd take, and the speaker, the microphone wasn't that good, but you could hear, you could understand what your professor was saying, this sort of thing. But I found that I couldn't take notes and hear, that it was best for me to just listen. And then it was also better for me to be visual. I had to be present in class. Some people could never go to class. Some people would go to class and never open a book, never take a note and make straight A's. That wasn't me. I had to learn the hard way. In fact, I got way out of college before I realized that I couldn't drink caffeine because caffeine made me go to sleep instead of kept me awake. And that Coca-Cola was better for me because it had a sugar content, and the sugar kept me awake, and the caffeine kept me even and mellow. And so all those things I learned, I didn't put the pieces together to probably 20 years after I'd gotten through college, and went back to college several times. And so I love this verse and the topic I'm going to talk to you about, because it is not about how good you are, how smart you are. It's not about, in fact, it's more about how weak you are, but how you're willing to make sacrifices and how you're willing to give up so that you can go up and grow up, that you give over to God instead of holding on to who you are. This verse, just 2 Corinthians 12:9. Let me read it from a couple of different translations. And the New International Version, sorry if you don't like that. I'm not crazy about it either, but sometimes it says it in a way that's pretty cool. But he said to me, God said to Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Now, that's pretty cool for me, because I had a whole lot more weaknesses than I had talent. Now, I had some talent, and that talent got me through life, got me on a national tour and an international tour between the ages of 15 and 18. Along with my sister, along with some friends, except for the one overseas. I was behind the Iron Curtain at 18 years of age and performed in Moscow with a large group. And then and all over Northern Europe. And that got me into the university as well, that talent, that musical talent and all that. But God would use those things to take me where he wanted to take me. The New Living Translation says, each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me." Each time he said, God said to him, "My grace is all you need." That's what he's saying to you. Sufficient, yeah, that's one way to say it. And the way we talk mostly is, it's all you need. Now, you can call me, why are you talking about these secular people and all that? Because we're all secular people. We're all people that were not in Christ. We were in our sin because it says we inherited sin from Adam and Eve, original sin. They rebelled against God by simply doing what God told them not to do. And that those consequences has made the whole earth suffer forever until God makes it right. Jesus was that he can make it right in each of our individual hearts because of his sacrifice and all that. But until the end of time, until it all comes together, that burden that the earth as a whole is taken, is that. So I'm listening to Matthew McConaughey and one of his speeches. I don't know if it's to a university or whatever. And I saw two things on him. And he said this in one of his speeches. He said, the process of elimination is the first step to success and identity. The process of elimination. And if you remember, I talked about Rick Warren and what he said, that his mentor, Peter Drucker, said to him, you got to tell me what you're giving up. I know you got a lot of things going on. I know you want to tell me all the things that you're getting ready to do, but you know our rule. You must give up something in order to take something on. So Matthew McConaughey says in one of his main points of how to be successful, the process of elimination is the first step to success and identity. Eliminate who you are not first. I thought that was really unique. It's like strip away the things that you're not. Stop trying to be what you're not. I tried to do a lot of things that I was not. And it took a lot of God's grace and his sufficiency for me to cut away all those things. I wish I had known that phrase, that it's what you say no to is more important than what you say yes to, because then you get to see what yes you should say yes to. And McConaughey goes on, he says, stop the victim mentality. You are not entitled to anything. I thought that was amazing because several generations, multiple generations throughout history, it goes in waves, think they're entitled. That's what causes the decay of countries and destruction and communism coming in. Government saying, we'll do it for you. We'll do it for you. You don't need to even think anymore. You let us think for you. And that's how you lose your freedom. So it says, you are not entitled to anything. McConaughey says, you are the author of your life. And start being the author of your life. Start working hard at it. He was on Joe Rogan's show. Once again, you're going, Joe Rogan, are you kidding me? The guy's not a Christian. I know. But McConaughey starts talking about his faith. And Rogan has been one who's criticized people and their faith and different things like that. But McConaughey is so disarming. And he said, every what I do is I really, give credit to God for what I do. And I'm very open about my faith in Jesus Christ. And he talked about the things that he struggles with in the Bible, but he also talked about, he said, the Proverbs, he said, I can live my life by those Proverbs. And he said, well, tell me how Hollywood has handled you and about your faith. He said, well, the interesting thing is, he said, people that I've had meals with of faith and that are in my industry and people that I've prayed with and done things like this with, he said, when I would stand up and get an award and I would say, I just want to thank God for giving me the ability to do these things. And I'd give credit to God. And he said, I'd see them start to clap. And then they would sit on their hands because they were afraid that they'd be judged by other people in the industry for clapping about me saying, I want to give God the credit for everything that's happening to me. And so things that you might not have expected out of Matthew McConaughey, maybe everything doesn't flesh out with who he is and isn't. But you know what? I started realizing that it didn't start. I've known this, and I've talked about this over and over. If you look throughout the ancient scriptures, the Bible and the Old Testament, the New Testament, and all that, it's full of flawed people. Flawed people. The difference is that when they fail, and fail they would, and God knew that they would fall because he already saw it in his first two perfect people that he created, Adam and Eve that they were flawed, and he didn't make them flawed, but they had free will, they had choice, that people would make mistakes. It says God knows everything, and he also says that he goes throughout the world seeking to help the righteous, not seeking to put people down, not seeking to cause them harm, but seeking to find the righteous, people that are right with him, so that he can help them. So I thought that was really refreshing just to hear that with Matthew McConaughey on just a 10-minute section, because I do a lot of flipping around, and that was just a 10-minute section that another Christian group had put up there. And they said, listen, we're not trying to lift Matthew McConaughey up like he's some great Christian. No. He says, but at least he's willing to talk about his faith and what he believed in Jesus Christ. Give up your life to save your life. Then Jesus said to all of them, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose or forfeit his very self? That's Luke 9:23-25. That was the Berean, I don't even know, Berean Standard Bible. I'm looking this up on like the Bible Hub so I can see these different translations. I've never even seen a copy of the Berean Standard Bible, but I thought that was a great translation. And those of you Greek scholars can go through and tear that down, break it up, make it yours. Then on the same night, I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger's 2018 The Speech That Broke the Internet. And see, God will use who he wants to use. He's going to give you great ideas. And by the way, all great ideas come from God the Father. All goodness comes from God the Father. He will speak through, if Christians will not say it, he will speak through somebody else to say it and give himself the glory if you're not going to give him the glory. You see that throughout Scripture. You see flawed people that he used. In fact, he only used flawed people because that's all there is in the world. If you're a flawed person, awesome. God's going to use you. If you have lots of weaknesses, great. Give it over to God. He's going to use you. And here's Arnold's speech, just pieces of it. I hate Plan B. Now, we used to talk about that. Some people kind of start backing up on that thing. But he said, it causes you to stiffen up and you think about what you might lose. You must relax in order to win. And how many times you've heard that? You've heard it whether it's in music, you've heard it in working out, you've heard it in sports. It's that relaxed state of knowing that you've prepared, knowing that you've tried your best to get ready for all those things. And then he says, and don't feel afraid to fail. We all fail. And then he quoted Michael Jordan. He said, Michael Jordan said in an interview, because they were saying, you are the greatest basketball player, NBA basketball player of all time. I know there's two Michael Jordans out there and one's in music. I know. This is Michael Jordan, the basketball player. And Michael said to them concerning that you're the greatest of all time and all that, and he said, I missed 9,000 shots in the NBA in order to be the greatest player of all time. Are you hearing this? I missed 9,000 shots in the NBA in order to be the greatest player of all time. Arnold said, failure is part of climbing the ladder of success. And he talked about what he did. You know, success does not come easy. God doesn't even let it be easy. There's certain things that you'll do in your life, but God will usually go through a process. He went through a process. There was a quicker process with Jeremiah. He said, you're young. I know you're young, but don't use that as an excuse. Go tell people what I tell you to tell them. And then he used time for a guy like Moses. And he made him sit out because he tried to do things on his own and rescue the people of Israel on his own from Pharaoh's palace. And he ended up having to run for his life because he killed an Egyptian, one of the soldiers of the Egyptian army, because he was beating some Israeli brothers of his, and Israelis turned on him and said some terrible things, and he fled for his life and ended up living by himself, not by himself, but as a shepherd for 40 years. So God does different things to different people. Paul, he sent him away for 3 years after his Damascus vision experience, where he was turned blind, saw the light and Jesus talking to him. So it goes on and on and on and on. The different time periods, 40 days for Jesus himself, who is the Son of God, who was there as both 100% God and 100% man. So you've got all of these things going on. And I'm just telling you these things because they interweave with God's experience. What do you mean you hate plan B? What do you mean, why shouldn't we have a plan B? Remember what it said? For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. It goes along with everything in life. You cannot be a great success if you are always second guessing. I've second guessed so many times. Listen, I've failed so many times. I wish I had great rewards or things, and there are great rewards that are in my life. People, my children, they were amazing. They're all three doing incredible things, and their spouses. And our grandchildren are amazing. But you know what? It wasn't an easy road. My wife and I had to sacrifice, and we decided to instead of her, she was an excellent elementary school teacher, an amazing teacher, and she ended up discipling a lot of girls for free while living on my salary as a youth pastor, because we chose to do that so we could raise our children with one of the parents at home all the time whenever they needed to be. And occasionally she would go on trips with me when they were, children, but we did a lot of sacrificing. But we had to burn our bridges of all the things that we wanted in our life in order to do the ministry that God had called us to. What about you? What are some things that God's kind of called you to? And I just made a recording about my youth pastors, Ronnie and Maxine Kennedy. And they had no titles. Beth Moore talks about, if you go back and listen to that, you hear what I say about them. They didn't know they were youth pastors. They only knew they had a heart for the students, and so they sacrificed themselves for I don't know if it was 8 years, if it was 10 years, but they kept giving and giving in spite of all the blockades the church would put up for them. And I'm sure that those people on the leadership boards that are still alive today, not many of them will be alive, would say that no, they did everything they could, but they didn't. They didn't understand. They didn't do that. And these guys had no titles. They just knew they had to do what they do. Beth Moore talks about, I think it was 2017, her last speech with the Passion Conference, where Louis Giglio said, Beth, I don't want you to give your normal teaching thing. I want you to tell them what they're experiencing right now and what's going to happen when they leave this place. And she said, all of you hear this message, and this message is for all of you. But some of you will leave and you will go home, and all you sacrificed was the price of an admission ticket and a hotel room, and none of this will completely stick. She said, but to some of you, because we've seen it happen over and over again, you are going to be infected with this message of Jesus Christ. You're going to be infected with the desire to serve him, and you won't be able to escape it. She said, and some of you are going to try to put titles on it, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to put the title of a pastor because at least people understand what a pastor is. Or I'm going to be a youth minister, or I'm going to be a music minister or discipleship. I'm going to put a title on it. I'm going to go to seminary. I'm going to do all those things. She says, but some of you are not going to know what to do. You're not going to know what title to put on it. All you know is that you can't help but share Jesus with people. All you know is that you can't help but disciple people, and yet you have no title. And God hasn't given you a title. He's only giving you a desire to serve. Why is that? Remember, there is no entitlement. except for what God has given you and entitled you to. But guess what? He will still make sure that you work through who you are in Him. You will still have to step out in faith and not feel entitled. God, why don't you make things easy? Guess what? None of ministry is easy for us. There's many times my wife and I, my children have said, why are you doing this? Why are you making this so hard? We've sacrificed so much for you. Why is this ending the way it's ending after 29 years and 35 years of full-time student ministry? What? And when we ask that in different things of life, why are we sick this way? Why is my child having to go through this? Why is this happening? Why are we having these arguments as a family? And on it goes. Why do these people not like us? And even though we no longer have those titles by the church, or we're bivocational now, we do what we can to make money, and thank God for the business that I'm with right now, George Warren and his Bay Pharmacy and Lake Pharmacy and those incredible people there, so that we can pay our bills and so that we can still produce things like this. But know this, if anyone wants to come after me, Jesus said, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. And Matthew McConaughey is just saying, listen, all I know is that I love God. I'm not going to be ashamed of who Jesus is and who God is in my life, whatever that means. Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, don't feel afraid to fail. And Jesus is saying this, when you fail, he's not saying if you fail, when you fail, turn to me and I will lift you up. In the Psalms, it says in several places, the righteous, one says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their seed begging for bread. I've never seen them fall without him getting you up or raising you up again. All I know is that with or without a title, love God, serve Him, pray, and ask Him, what do you want me to do today? What part of me do I need to give up today so I can take up the part of me that you want me to do something for? So youth workers, friends of mine, I hope this encourages you to know that we are all in our weaknesses strengthened by God to be the best that we can be, because He empowers us to do that. Don't act like you're entitled. Don't act like that God owes you, because He's already paid that price and He's already paid what He owes for you. You couldn't afford to pay it, so Jesus did it. All right, you'll have a good day. I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.